Is it recording? Right on. Hey everybody, my name is Owen Hemstath, theapologetic315, and this is a video response to On the Box, which they were discussing tattoos and the Christian's position in tattoos. Specifically, the question was, once I'm saved, once I've accepted Christ as my Messiah, do I need to get my tattoos removed? And the response from On the Box was, you know, if those tattoos don't glorify God, more or less, or if they are an illustration of your old life, if they're pornographic, they speak to drug use and things like this, then you should consider getting those tattoos removed. And I would agree. I would fully concur with that statement. And I wanted to even address some additional points on the scriptural references of tattoo use. A lot of times we confuse the biblical position of tattoos with Leviticus 19:28, which, as the NIV translates, and do not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor put tattoo marks on you. And that's really not a full translation of the verse. I think a better translation would be, you know, nor put markings on your skin. And we have to take a look at this verse in context, because I've heard a lot of Christians use this verse to you know, reiterate the importance of not getting a tattoo, and it's an incorrect translation. You have to look at the context. He's talking about don't get tattoos on your skin for the dead. It's clear in the verse. They're speaking of a pagan ritual of recognizing and holding on to dead people, dead friends, dead family members, and they would put markings on them to keep their spirit with them. Sometimes it would be used for seances and to channel the dead. And the scripture is saying, don't do that. Now, taking another look at, you know, plus the word tattoo didn't really exist back in King James days. So the NIV using the term tattoo is really, you know, it's not so intellectual. There's not so much integrity there intellectually. So I would be wary of that. Make sure that you're getting your concordance out and looking at your concordance, especially when you're coming across vernacular that's using modern day nouns and adjectives. I'm always looking up adjectives because I want to know what the original says. Now, in the book of Revelation, we read that in Revelation 19:16, we say we hear of the return of Yeshua, and it reads, "And he treads the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of El Shaddai," which is my favorite name for God, by the way. "And on his robe and on his thigh he has a name written, Sovereign or Sovereign." Sovereign of sovereigns and Master of masters. Now, some in the Messianic community, which I do consider myself to be a part, some in the Messianic community actually revert to a Hebraic translation of Revelation. They say that, well, chances are John actually wrote this in Hebrew, despite the fact that John, you know, was among the Gentiles when he wrote this on the island of Patmos. So, did he write it in Hebrew? I don't think so. I don't think there's enough hard evidence to suggest that. I think that what you have there is a worldview that is leading an interpretation of the evidence. Now, the name, the word for thigh could also be translated banner, and on his banner, which, you know, coming into battle, which would be consistent. However, we do read that there is something written, and, you know, if we are speaking on Jesus's thigh, it's written clearly, you know, Sovereign of sovereigns. It alludes to possibly Jesus having a tattoo or a marking on his skin that says, you know, I am the Lord of Lords. I don't use this as a strong verse to support the use of tattoos. But we have to remember, but it is a verse there, so I just wanted to approach that. Generally speaking, I would agree with the on the box interpretation in that, what does your tattoo say? Is it a marijuana leaf? I remember back in my old days, I strongly thought about getting a bud leaf on my arm, because I was all about it. I was all about, you know, that culture, the pot culture. I would be immensely embarrassed today at 31 years old to have that tattoo on my arm. You know, I couldn't imagine professionally doing business with that tattoo and being taken seriously. Even among stoners in the business community, they don't want to brag about it to the business community. However, I had no tattoos until I became a Christian. It wasn't until I was a Christian that I wanted my whole body. I wanted to die to my flesh. I was so vain. I didn't want anything of permanence on my skin. And it was all about me and looking good. And so when I became a Christian, I really took literally the verses of dying to the flesh and dying to myself. And so I decided to go get a tattoo that reflected Christ and the power of God through an apologetic manner. And because as I'm passionate about apologetics and using apologetic to break down barriers and remove stumbling blocks in order to make room for the gospel. So I went ahead and I got the message of intelligent design on my arm. And what you're looking at is the bacteria flagellum as written about by Michael Behe, probably the country's leading advocate in the intelligent design movement. What we're looking at is the bacteria flagellum. It's a 40-part working motor, faster than any motor on Earth. This little tail right here can change directions in simply a quarter spin, and this is 1/1000th the size. Well, let's say put it this way: 1,000 of these could be rested on the head of the point of a needle. So it's super tiny. And then of course I've got the fossil record here, DNA, and the cosmos, because in the beginning God created all creatures, great and small. I've shown the tattoo to leaders like William Dembski, who's actually featured the tattoo. We had a conversation at an apologetic event. The tattoo he put on his blog, Uncommon Descent, and it's generally been an area of interest for people at the gym or at the beach. What's that on your arm? Is that a dragon? Tell me about that. And I get to lead immediately into the nonsense of Darwinism and the message of intelligent design. So again, when it comes to your tattoo, what does your tattoo say? Are you glorifying the Creator? Are you glorifying the flesh? Are you glorifying the world? Are you glorifying the enemy? That's something to think about. As I was getting the tattoo, I had an awesome opportunity to witness to people that may not otherwise hear the gospel. There was a girl there who had a picture of every religious leader, including Jesus, on her arm. Ironically enough, it was the cross that was covered by the sleeve. Everything else was available to see full time. So I asked her, I was like, well, why is it that you have, everybody? You've got Buddha, Muhammad, all those different kinds of things. And she said, well, I wanted to cover all my bases. And I thought that was odd, as if when you die, you look at the Almighty and he says, let me see your tattoos. So I just don't think that's the case. So what do your tattoos stand for? What do they glorify? And that's something that you should look at. So anyway, this is Owen Hemsath, the Apologetic.